What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a ranking video. I haven't done one of these in a long time. I really enjoy making them, it's just that they take a lot of time and effort. Planning and particularly the editing stage takes a long time, but I think I've finally come across a franchise that I want to do a deep dive on, and that is the Jurassic franchise, which now has 7 entries, including the brand new Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm under the assumption that very few people will disagree with me when I say that the original Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg, is one of the greatest adaptations of all time, and it is a quintessential film in the sci-fi iconography. It's also a deeply personal film to me. It's one of the earliest memories I have of genuinely just being immensely thrilled by a film and wanting to revisit it immediately after watching it as a kid. I also grew up loving dinosaurs. You know, it's one thing to be a lover of film, but if you love film and dinosaurs, of course this is going to be a special one for you. As far as some of the sequels go, I mean, you're about to find out, and I'll warn you right now, if you love all of these movies, I'm about to tear some of them a brand new asshole. In any case, I would much rather watch a bad movie with dinosaurs in it than a bad movie with no dinosaurs. So I feel like I give some of these movies brownie points that I wouldn't give to films in other franchises solely because I like seeing dinosaurs on screen. There are very few big budget blockbusters that are doing what this franchise has done, in that they show me my favorite creatures that have ever walked the earth in the flesh, even though they might not be perfectly realistic based on what paleontology has told us over the years. One last thing before I jump right in. This is my opinion and my opinion only. You're welcome to disagree with it. In fact, I invite disagreement. And that is why I would like to encourage all of you to drop your lists down in the comments so we can discuss why we like and love and dislike all of these films. To be honest, my number 7 and number 6 are pretty much neck and neck, so I had a difficult time determining which one I think deserves to be dead last. If you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different answer, but as of today, I'm feeling number 7 is Jurassic World Dominion, a film with a slam dunk setup following the events of Fallen Kingdom, which left us in a literal Jurassic World. Dinosaurs are loose in the Californian wilderness, genetic power has been commercialized and spread across the globe, and it seemed like we were in for some Planet of the Apes level dystopia. But this movie is not really about dinosaurs at all. Instead, it's a globe-trotting corporate espionage Mission Impossible wannabe about InGen's rival company Biosyn, attempting to monopolize the world's supply of crops. They intend to do this by releasing genetically altered locusts that devour every brand of seed but their own. Wow, I'm sure no one would find that suspicious. Don't get me wrong, that concept is very Michael Crichton-esque, but it doesn't belong in Jurassic Park, let alone the final entry that was advertised as the epic conclusion to a 6-film saga. It just doesn't make sense to do that. And worst of all, the 3 returning leads from the original Jurassic Park are delegated to solving the locust predicament rather than doing anything related to, dinosaurs. Meanwhile, Chris Pratt chases after Biosyn mercenaries who have kidnapped the clone girl from the previous film, except she's not actually a clone girl because they retcon that in this entry. This movie defies all logic. Dinosaurs only eat the bad guys, and all you have to do to suppress their predatory instinct is apparently just hold your hand up and stare them into submission, as demonstrated by Owen. All of the main characters are impervious to death or any kind of injury. I also hate how this one contains loads of MCU-style buzzword humor. It just comes off as totally awkward. That god-awful line about Ian sliding into Ellie's DMs is a prime example of the shitty modernized comic relief that Hollywood keeps shoving down our throats, because I think they just hear younger generations saying these things and think it'll sound cool if they give characters who are in their 50s or 60s the same lines. The unfortunate thing about Dominion is that I think it actually has a lot of cool individual set pieces involving dinosaurs, particularly the black market scene on Malta. That was pretty thrilling. I liked the Therizinosaurus. Some good stuff with the Dimetrodons and the mines, and even that initial Giganotosaurus attack on the ladder. All of that stuff is perfectly serviceable, but that's all these scenes are. They're just brief chase sequences that are well shot and well put together, but have no relevance to the story, and most of them are set in Biosyn's giant reserve, rather than human-populated areas as teased by the last film's setup. Most embarrassingly, nothing plot-wise changes between the opening prologue and the closing frames of this movie. There's an opening reel that tells us that dinosaurs and humans are now trying to coexist, and it's not working. The dinosaurs ain't meshing with our society, and something has to be done. At the end of the movie, dinosaurs are still living in our world, nothing has changed, and yet it's treated as some sort of harmonious paradise. Like, what the hell am I watching? There has been zero change to get from point A to point B. I suppose it could have been worse, but I mean, this film had a great premise on a silver platter and they still fumbled it. I don't give a shit about the human cloning. I certainly don't care about the stupid goddamn locusts. I will never understand how you make a movie in which dinosaurs are living amongst humankind and the plot itself is not about the dinosaurs. Number 6 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. In many ways, this one is just as bad as Dominion, but I think this one might be a tad less cringy. I like the opening scene, and I think J.A. Bayona leaves much more of a directorial impression than that hack Colin Trevorrow in his World films. There was a clear intent to make this one more horror-oriented, particularly in the third act. I think this is one of those films that had a clear end goal, and they simply had no earthly idea how to logistically get the characters in the plot to that point, because this is the one that sets up Dominion and that dinosaurs are loose in the real world. So how do they go about it? Instead of taking the time to write a better story, we get this half-assed, last-minute rescue op to save the dinosaurs from an actively erupting volcano on Isla Nublar. But that rescue op is actually just a cover story for the real mission, which is to sell off the dinosaurs so that they can invest more money in their stupid hybrid program. As if Claire and Owen aren't bland enough as the leads, this time we gotta bring in the annoying nothing burger paleo veterinarian and the computer nerd dude who does nothing but scream like a child the entire film. I think the first half of Fallen Kingdom has some decent enough spectacle, especially when they're on the island being chased as the volcano is erupting. But it's remarkably goofy, full of the same cringe humor that we get in Dominion, and it leads to a clusterfuck of a third act. You'll find out soon enough how I feel about the Indominus Rex, but if there's one thing that I can say for sure, it's that we did not need the plotline to be recycled in this sequel. Mind you, I think the Indoraptor is actually pretty cool looking, but watching it chase the characters around in an old man's mansion is just boring. This film also commits the unforgivable sin of retconning. Maybe retconning isn't the right word. It goes back and adds new stuff to the backstory that exists in this character who was, I guess, John Hammond's partner in his original venture. And that character just didn't need to exist at all. You could have just had the characters in this mansion be the people who inherited the wealth of John Hammond. Throw in a bunch of awkward symbolism and callbacks that don't need to be there, and you have yourself an utter mess of a Jurassic film. It's all so damn contrived right up until the moment that little girl Maisie hits the button and releases the dinosaurs into the wilderness. This franchise never acknowledged how many human deaths she was responsible for in this moment. There are other ways they could have had the dinosaurs break free other than having one character be an idiot. And of course, she's now one of the protagonists, so we're basically forced to like her after this horrible decision that will inevitably cost a lot of people their lives. Yeah, to be honest, this one just gets worse and worse every time I revisit it. Number 5 is the brand new Jurassic World Rebirth, and it gives me no pleasure to place it this low on the list because I was optimistic about Gareth Edwards signing on to direct and original Jurassic Park screenwriter David Koepp returning to write. And I'll say this, it's a step in the right direction after Fallen Kingdom and Dominion in that it simplifies the story. There's no locusts, no human clones, no mega corporations trying to bring down the global food supply. But I do find it hilarious how massively this film pivots from Dominion's ending. If they really wanted to, they could have gone in the Planet of the Apes direction even after Dominion, but I guess all of our problems have just naturally solved themselves because it turns out in this film that dinosaurs can't survive our modern climate and are only able to sustain themselves in an isolated belt of tropical conditions near the equator. And that's precisely where a new team of nothing burger characters must travel in order to collect dino DNA for applications in cardiovascular health, which I guess was kind of an interesting idea, feels very deep blue sea to me. And the main corporate executive guy's excuse for not bringing an army to the island for added protection is that they need to keep it confidential so that other pharmaceutical companies don't catch on to what they're doing, I guess? So let me get this straight. You're going to travel to a dinosaur-infested island with just one dinky little boat and a few cheap mercenaries, accompanied by this idiotic corporate tycoon who definitely doesn't have shady motives or anything, because who would expect that, right? Look, I appreciate the contained, streamlined story of this one, and I think the sequences with dinosaurs are well executed, but it feels awkward in how it meshes these two groups of characters together, the mercenaries going after the DNA, and then the other half is basically a rehash of Jurassic Park 3 because we followed Dad of the Year and 3 kids that he decided to bring along with him on a sailing trip through dinosaur-infested waters. As contrived as it is, as dumb as the characters have to be to find themselves in these situations, I liked watching them get chased and eaten. There are a couple of really well executed set pieces, and even though I wasn't fully on board with caring about the characters, Gareth Edwards was still able to bring the tension out, particularly the early sequence on the boat involving the Mosasaurus and the Spinosaurus. And then the river rafting scene later on with the Tyrannosaurus, which is actually adapted straight from the first novel. But the overall plotting is painfully predictable, and these have to be some of the thinnest characters in the franchise. Say what you want about those kids in the first Jurassic World, how inconsequential it was for them to have this entire subplot about their parents going through a divorce and them having to trauma bond over what's happening to them. At least it was something. There was no effort to develop any of these characters, and while there aren't any giant locusts or militarized raptors with laser-guided attack commands, there are a bunch of genetic mutants, or aberrations, whatever you want to call them, that were maybe created on purpose, maybe on accident, I'm not sure. We'll probably never know the answer because the film doesn't tell us. Horrible idea. I hate that they keep doing this. This is Jurassic Park, not Alien or Star Wars. I want dinosaurs, not fictional monsters. This is the classic case of a mixed bag, but it has the most potential to rise or fall on the list considering I have only seen it twice. Number 4 is Jurassic Park 3, perhaps the most mediocre entry in the franchise. There's nothing completely offensive about it, but it has the weakest characters and the highest number of implausible moments out of the original trilogy, in my opinion. It's very similar in overall structure and purpose to Jurassic World Rebirth. And what I mean by that is that this movie is less of a Michael Crichton thought piece about reckless advancements in science and how life can find a way through adversity, and more about getting humans trapped on an island so that dinosaurs can chase them and eat them. This is also the last film to use practical effects for a significant amount of the dinosaur scenes. I know Fallen Kingdom and Dominion used some sparingly, but Jurassic Park 3 was one of the few that still used a lot of animatronics for most of the dinosaurs. And I have to say the Spinosaurus in this one looks a little bit robotic, nowhere near as convincing as the T-Rex in the two predecessors. Even still, there's just something about practical that always feels more authentic to me, so I prefer it. I know that I just said there's nothing overly offensive in this movie, but it does still have some pretty arguably stupid moments. The whole idea of Alan Grant being conned into going to Isla Sorna with this rich couple claiming to be solely interested in a flyby tour, I just find that to be laughable. Like, he didn't bother to do any form of verification, especially after they offered to fund his digs with a big check. Speaking of this married couple, or I guess previously married couple, the Kirbys, they're annoying and stupid. I'll never understand why characters like Amanda and Franklin need to be in these movies. All they do is run around like a deer in the headlights and scream. It's insufferable. Anyways, most of the dinosaur stuff in this movie is passable. The inclusion of Spinosaurus as the main antagonist, if you will, was a nice switch up from the usual Tyrannosaurus. Now, I'm certainly not going to sit here and defend the disrespect of having the Spino kill a T-Rex with such ease. But thankfully, there are a lot of other dinosaurs to occupy screen time. The Pteranodon sequence in the birdcage is very memorable. To the best of my knowledge, this is also the only entry in the franchise in which a dinosaur speaks, even if it's only a dream sequence.
Alan.
Jokes aside, I do kind of like how Alan is traumatized by the raptors, and yet is also so fascinated to learn more about them. I don't know, Jurassic Park 3 is just a very average disaster flick that happens to have dinosaurs and one character that I really like, that being our protagonist. It's not bad, but it's not very good either. Number 3 is Jurassic World, maybe the most overhated entry in the franchise. I don't know, I feel like this movie has had a similar lifespan to The Force Awakens. People generally liked it at the time of release, but because the two sequels got increasingly awful, people now pretend like they hated it from the jump. It's certainly a deeply cynical film, that much I can admit. The idea that kids are no longer impressed by dinosaurs after like 10 years of the park being in operation is pretty implausible. I mean, kids are still amazed by zoo animals, and they've been around since the dawn of modern human civilization. But I do kind of like the idea of the Indominus Rex as a commentary on consumerism and the constant need for corporations to up the ante with the next big thing. And unlike the Locusts, it's a way to do something slightly new with the franchise that still feels within the realm of Crichton's ideas, without fully abandoning dinosaurs as a core ingredient. Fan servicey as it may be, I remember being so satisfied to see a functioning park with thousands of guests in attendance, and I think that makes this film all the more fun when hell does break loose. The characters are nothing special, and the entire raptor training subplot has not aged well. I think it makes them far less terrifying when they were so fiendishly horrific in the first 3 films. But I think Owen and Claire were fine enough characters before those 2 sequels went on to do absolutely nothing with them. As much as they are caricatures, they still have more depth than Rebirth's characters, in my opinion. And I know the 2 brothers get a lot of hate, but I must say when I watched this back in 2015 at the age of 15, I couldn't stop thinking that I would 100% be that kid geeking out about all the fun facts about the animals and crap. This is a big, loud, dumb summer popcorn flick, and in many ways it's a lesser version of Spielberg's original, but I think it does just enough new to shake things up, and it's a shame that it went so far off the rails afterwards. With only 2 entries left to discuss, I think it's pretty obvious which one is going to occupy the number 2 spot, and that is The Lost World, the only one of the sequels to be directed by Steven Spielberg, and I am continually surprised by the negative attitudes towards this one, because I think it's easily the smartest and most tonally consistent entry with the original. It still has a few dumb moments here and there, like Ian Malcolm's daughter doing her little gymnastics stunt while that raptor just stands there and watches dumbfoundedly. And Ludlow is an idiot, obviously, but he's more of a believable idiot to me than the mustache-twirling villains in some of the later Jurassic films. It's also a remarkably funny movie, though. I think Jeff Goldblum leading the story is either going to work or not work for you. Personally, I love him here, and some of his lines in this one are equally as iconic as his stuff from the original. I like the setup, John Hammond going from capitalist to naturalist and being called out for doing so, but now we have to go to Site B to rescue Ian's girlfriend and maybe sabotage InGen's new mission to collect dinosaurs for their current plans to open a smaller park in San Diego on the mainland. Lots of memorable side characters in this one, most notably Roland. I believe I've spent enough time in the company of death. I mean, that line is awesome. And you can tell that Spielberg directed this one too. That entire set piece in the RV by the cliffside with the 2 Rexes is a franchise high. I think it's better than a lot of the stuff in the original too, if I'm being completely honest. The long grass sequence with the raptors also comes to mind, and we get some good stuff with the compies too. I wouldn't call this a great film though. It does lose some steam as it lumbers towards the 3rd act, and as much as I enjoyed seeing the Tyrannosaurus rampage through San Diego, that entire sequence does feel very tacked on and awkward. Everyone escapes the island in this big triumphant moment, and then it just suddenly cuts to a bunch of people on the mainland dock waiting for the cargo to arrive. It just doesn't really work in terms of a consistently paced story. Either way, I think it's a fun sequel, and you should definitely give it a shot if you slept on it. And to no one's surprise, number 1 is the original Jurassic Park. Look, I get that film is subjective and people are welcome to their opinions, but if you put this movie anywhere else on the list, I don't think I can trust you. This is easily one of my favorite films of all time. I first watched it at a young age, like I mentioned earlier in the video, and it's certainly a massive influence on my love of film, but also my fascination with dinosaurs. The concept of de-extinction and building an amusement park with dinosaurs is so brilliant in that it's obviously not possible in real life, at least in our present time, but it's just grounded enough to feel like plausible science fiction. You know what I mean? Like, there's science fiction where you're like, yeah, this is just complete nonsense. And then there's science fiction that's at least somewhat rooted in actual reality and what's possible. And one thing that all of the World films and even some of the other sequels seem to have forgotten is that some of the best scenes in Jurassic Park are merely occupied by the human characters sitting in a room having philosophical and ethical discussions about the merit and the dangers of what John Hammond has built. I don't believe it. I brought you here to defend me against these characters, and the only one on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer. Sorry, I have to quote a couple of lines in this video. The point is, this film takes its time to set up the characters and the premise so that when the dinosaurs break out of their cages, you actually care about the people that are running through the jungle. I don't think I ever even realized that the T-Rex doesn't break out of its paddock until nearly an hour into the film. The rest of that, I mean, yeah, there's a few sequences of dinosaurs in there, and most of them are just people being in awe of the sauropods and, you know, herbivorous dinosaurs. But it makes you wait for those sequences of peril, and when they set in, they're actually pretty terrifying. I revisited this film a couple of days ago, and I forgot just how intimidating the raptors are. I mean, when I was younger and watched this film for the first time, I remember having nightmares about these things. They were genuinely frightening, and this one feels more violent and almost closer to Michael Crichton's novels than any of the other films, which I feel only got more tame in terms of how much blood and violence they were willing to show as they went on. It's big, it's loud, it's exhilarating. It fits that billing that very few summer blockbusters can achieve, in that It feels like all ages can enjoy it, with maybe a few exceptions. I wouldn't show your really young kids this movie. But it provides summer family fun, it provides awe, but it also provides a lot of terror and tension. Also, as far as Lex and Tim go, I think they are much less annoying than the child characters in a lot of the other films, and they serve more of a purpose here. They actually provide the means for Dr. Grant to have some character growth. Damn it, I love this movie. It's perfect. So that is my official ranking of all 7 films in the Jurassic franchise from worst to best. Once again, I'd like to remind you to please drop down into the comments and let me know how you would rank them and where you think Rebirth fares in terms of where this franchise might go in the future. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe before you head out if you want more content like this. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.